Hi everyone and welcome back to the multiverse of 100 plus data science project series. In this video, we're going to be creating here a AI data analyst chatbot using Python and large language model. So without wasting any time, let us start our tutorial right now. Let's have a look about the data summary. So first, we're going to take in the input from the users. So user can upload here the files. It may be the CSV, and it also be the Excel file. So it's essentially the data sets we are taking from the Kaggle for the testing purposes, and user can also ask in the questions based on these data sets. And after that, we need to processing here our files that is uploaded by the users. So it's called the file pre-processing. So in the file pre-processing, it also has some step. First one is file saved temporary. I mean, you're going to saving the file temporarily so that you can do some operations on the files. And after that, you need to convert it, the data, I mean the file, into a Pandas data frame so that we can apply here the distributions. We can also do various types of analysis and the pre-processings. Then we have the data cleaning part. It's basically cleaning the data. If in our data set it had the date time column, so we need to also process them in the form of separated date, time, I mean year, month, and the day, like that. And otherwise, you need to also converting here textual data into numerical. Now this part is quite typical. I mean, it's not typical actually. It's technical. Let's say I have one data which is basically one. Let's say I have one data called, let's say, one, but this data is coming in the form of textual. I mean, the data is coming in the form of objects. I'm talking about the categorical data, but this data is essentially a numerical data. So how and you getting here any kind of numerical data, which one is by default the data type is nothing but the textual, or by default the data type is the object. So you need to convert them into the numericals. So this is the file processing part. And after that, we need to do the prompt generation for the large language model. So you're going to using here the Groq large language model. I am talking about the Groq cloud. So in Groq Cloud, you are basically accessing here free and open source model, or you're going to using the Llama model. You can also using the DeepSeek distillation model from this Groq Cloud. Okay, so here we need to creating here a prompt generation for the large language models. So it also have some PERD for questions. I mean, the question is asking by the users plus a data context, which one is nothing but the prompt. So this prompt is basically consists of two things. One is the questions itself, another one is the data context. And second part is sample instructions. So we basically give in here some kind of sample instructions to the large language model so that our large language model is not getting hallucinations I mean, it stay to the topic that we discuss on here. Okay, sometimes our LLM model is getting hallucinations, or it's maybe a problem, or he maybe give you the answer which is out of topics. So that's why it's better you can give it here some kind of sample instructions. Okay, then after that we have the LLM code generation, which one is essentially the code. It's generated by the Llama model. So LLM returning here and valid Python codes, and that's our main aim. Okay, so you give it here a prompt, and based on this prompt and instruction, it will actually creating here some kind of Python code. And then we focus on using here basically data frame. You can see we're using here data frame, I mean the Pandas data frame. Okay, and after that the code execution phase, it also have some steps. So code is sequentially executed using the Python's interpreter. Then output capture from the result variable. I mean, we are going to creating here a variable called result, where I mean the result is basically stored. And after that, we can be float or table or number, etc. If it have any kind of floating types of things, so we can floating this out. Or if it have any kind of table, just like showing the data in a row, we can basically show it. Or if it has some kind of number, or maybe let's say how many columns it have, or how many data it have in the outcome columns, because you're going to using the diabetes data set, right? So this kind of data you can actually show it in your executions query results. And then we have the output visualizations. We're going to simply going to visualize here answer. So result display on the text or data frame or image. So if it is just nothing but one simple thing, so you plot it in the text, and if it have the data frame text, I mean, just for showing here the data in the row and column, so you basically using here this data frame. Or if it is have the image, I mean the graph, so we can also visualize them in our applications. And then the user view the results. So this is nothing but our data flow summary, that how our full projects actually look like, and how the flow of our full projects. Now let's see what are the modules and the purpose of that. So the module that you're going to use first, that's called the Pandas. It's essential to actually do the data manipulations or data visualization, as well as the data processings. So data processing, reading CSV or Excel file, transformation, I mean data transformations, preview, and the executions. For that, we actually using here this Pandas library, which is more importance. Then another one, this library called CSV. You can see it's called CSV, comma separated below. So it's used to code the field properly, how and saving clean data at the CSV. I mean, how and we basically do the file preprocessing, that you can see file preprocessing. So some of the data may be coming in the from the date time, so you need to process them in the year, date, or month. So we need to also save it in a another clear data frame file, so that the data you don't have any kind of messy data. Okay, we also take care of the missing value as well. So we need to saving these, and for saving this, we basically using here the CSV library called used to code the file properly, how and the saving clean data as the CSV. Then you're going to also using the stamp file, because if I see in the pre-processing, so in this part you can see we need to file saved in temporarily. So in order to temporarily saving the file, we basically using here the stamp file. So temporarily saving the pre-processed files to disk separately. Then the Groq, you can see we are going to using here this Groq model. It's for connecting with the Groq API and generating the Python code from queries. And then you have our built-in function called exec for executions, the generated Python code using the actual data frame. Because our model is basically giving the Python code, so you need to also execute it, okay, using here our Python interpreters. So first, what I can do is see our raw code, I mean raw and backbone code, and after that, you're going to implement it in our Flask applications. Okay, we're testing it out in a web application. Okay, so first, let's see how can we basically accessing here the Groq API from the Groq cloud, and you're going to using here the Llama model. Let's see. All right, so this is the Groq Cloud workspace that you can see. You can asking any kind of questions, and this Groq Cloud model is basically give you the answers. It essentially using this Llama 4 model right now. So you can also go on the API key sections, and you can getting here an API key, creating on here. Just you need to click on here to create API key, and you just need to give it here and names. And if I go into this docs file, then you can see one sections called model. Here you basically see some kind of productions model, the preview model. You can use any of them. You can using his Llama 3 model. You can using here the Whisper model. You can also using here this Gamma 29BIT by Google's. You can also using here text to speech. You can using here image and visuals. You can also using here the reasoning model. Okay. So now what I can do is simply going to using here this Llama 3.370 versatile, or you can using here any kind of from here. Now let's go on the code. So what I can do, let's go on the code. It's not but already in my BS code. I already writing that the code on here. So you can see it have one, two, three Python file. First one is about the app.py file. Here we have our applications code. Then inside its utils, it have the some of the code which is regarding to the processing the CSV files. Okay. Now let's go to the test.py file and understand the code in details. And after that, you implement it in our applications. So first you import here the pandas library that you can see. We import here the pandas as PD. Then you also import here the temp file that you can see temp file. And then you import here the CSV and also import here from Groq. We import here the Groq. So अब तो मुझे ये पैट नहीं चाहिए, तो इधर पे चले जाओ और माउस चले जाओ इधर पे, नहीं चाहिए मुझे. Okay, fine. So इसका बाद क्या कर सकता हूँ? Okay, fine. थोड़ा हिंदी बोल दिया मैंने actually. So dap pre-process and save. So this is the function which I'm taking here a file path, and it's basically pre-process here our pre-processed here our Excel or the CSV file which is basically uploaded. If I see on here, then if I go, so you can see everything on here. Here you go. You can see file pre-processing, file save temporary, and converted to data frame. So for that, you're basically creating here this kind of actually functions. Okay. Or you can say methods. Then we give it here and try and exit blast so that it can we can just handling here the errors. So if the file path dot ends with the CSV, because we know that user can actually upload here the Excel file as well as they can also upload here the CSV files. So if the file path dot ends with dot CSV, so we're just simply going to reading this out. So df, we just taking here data frame name as a df is equal to pd.read underscore CSV, and we passing here the file path and encoding as UTF-8, this encoding technique. And also if we have any kind of missing value like NA or N/A or missing, we just going to convert them into NaN like that. I mean NaN value. Okay. Then if the file path it's and with .xlxx, it's mean the Excel file. Same thing, you also do it, but we don't give it here any kind of encoding technique. It's essentially helping in the case of CSV files that encoding technique. So we give it to here. Okay. And after that, if you don't get any kind of error, obviously, so you're returning here the none. So none, and unsupported file format. I mean, if we got in here any kind of error, let's say unsupported file format is not supported. And then what we can do, basically, we simply going to escaping here the double quotation into two double quotation C. I mean, in the case of objects. So for columns in df.select data type includes is equal to objects. I mean, we're searching for the categorical columns and df.columns as type as a string and replacing here this single double quotations. I mean, escape them into the two double quotations. Okay, it may be happen in the case of data sets. And after that, what I can do, we also trying to taking here all the columns. If in the columns it have the date, just we simply going to convert them into Pandas data frame. You can see pd dot date time, and we passing here our date columns, and inside its arrow we give it here one arrow, the arrow functions. Okay, so you can see arrow method actually. And then inside that we simply going to give it here one elif, and if the data frame, I mean df.column, the data is basically objects, or you need to also convert them into numeric. I mean, it's basically an objects, but it's a numerical data, so you need to convert them into the two numericals. Okay, if it is a numerical actually, let's say I have one data which is nothing but let's say 1, so we basically convert them into the numerical, but the data is basically the objects. Let's say I have my name, let's Chando like that, so it's basically the string. Okay, but it's not going to convert them into numericals, because we say that if the data is objects but it is nothing but a numerical data, so it will directly convert them into two numerical, otherwise it will just pass. That's it. Okay, we already discussed it here in our slide that you can see this thing, right? These things, it may happen in the data sets when you have the various amount of noisy data. Then we also store it inside a temple. I mean our the temporary file, saving it, I mean plain data sets. So with temp file dot name temporary file, we delete, make it delete is equal to false, and subpiece is equal to csv, and mode is w, and new line give it here, and new line, and coding technique utf add as a temp file. And after you're going to save it to df.tocsv, we passing here the temp file, the names, the index equal to false, and coding equal to csv.code to false. And after that, you're returning here our data frame and list of columns, as well as we're returning here an HTML preview, so that we can, after that, how you actually implement it in our applications, so that you can also show it in the form of HTMLs. Otherwise, we simply continue returning here none, so that you can see exceptions. So if it have any exception, we're just returning here the nuns. Now we're taking the input, that you can see input. So we're using here this diabetes dataset. I mean PIMA diabetes dataset from the Kaggle. You know about this one: pregnancy, glucose, blood pressure, skin thickness, insulin, BMI, diabetes predictive functions, age, and outcome. So here you need to actually the predict here the outcome below. Okay. So you're already creating here and projects about that, advanced projects using these data sets actually. So just taking here the diabetes data set just for the testing purposes, and also give it here a query: how many patients have diabetes outcome as ones. Okay. So you also give it here our Groq API key that you copied from the Groq cloud, and then we simply going to creating here our execution flow. So first we check that if the Groq API is provided or not. So if it is not provided, we just going to give it here, please provide your Groq API key, sir. Okay. Otherwise, create here a try and catch block, and you calling here this pre-process and save functions. So this function here we passing here our file path, and if it got in here any error, it will show the error. Otherwise, it says the file saved process successfully, and you can preview here the file pro. Okay. Then this is our most important. If we have the query, in here, so we're simply going to creating here a prompts. Now you are a Python data analyst given a Pandas data frame named df. Just give it to instruction that our dataset name should be the df. So I mean variable names. So with Python code using Pandas to answer these questions, and you can see the questions, and you pass it to our prompt templates. Okay. So only return the Python code, no explanations, no C, just return here the Python codes. So use result as the final output variables. Okay, you already give it to here. If I go on here, that you can see, you also mentioned about this variable name that's called result that you can see. Okay, so then you can see client. So client is a Groq. Here we passing here our API key and Groq API key, and we basically give it here our role and users and context that you can see prompt. And our model is Llama 3.3 17 million versatiles. And after that, you're going to use this code completions.choice. So because the model is basically give it here more amount of actually, sorry, more not actually. Let's say the actually what is called the large language model just giving here 5 answer for that. So from this 5 answer, I need to choosing here the best one. So just choosing here the first index and dot message dot contact or strip, and we stripping here the pythons because it's just giving you pythons the file name and like that. So it's just stripping here the python from here, and then we show here the generated code, and you can see the code is generated because we already writing it here the python like that. And after that, you have creating here a local variable called df is df, and inside that we actually using here these executions, which one is nothing but a built-in function in pythons. So it is basically calling here our python interpreter, and it is generating here it actually writing here the codes. And then we so you can see here otherwise it will show me the blank space and the local variables. And if I see the local variable get, we getting here the result. So no result is generated. Okay, otherwise no the result is actually generated. It's talking about taking from these result variables. And after that, you can see we can finally printing it out. And if the instance is data frame, so we can simply going to show it in the from string, and otherwise printing the results. And if it is a guarding exception, so you can say the exception occurs. Okay, so now what I can do, we're simply going to go on here, and we can simply going to running it on here. So make sure that you are using here the Python 3.12. I mean, it's better you can using here Python version which is greater than 3.12. It will be better. So you can see it preview the 5 questions, and you can see it also give me the result. I mean generated code, also the final results. Cool. You can see it preview here the first the 5 rows, as well as you can see that it will actually show it there are the Python code. You can basically execute it in your Pythons, and you can also show here this kind of results. It basically executed this full code. Okay. Now, what I can do now, we're simply going to implementing here this code in our applications. Okay. So further, what I can do is simply going to go inside this app.py file. So we're basically using here this Flux. Okay. First, it's better we can just running the application, and let's see how the output is look like, or how the UI look like. And in the final, we actually showing you the output. Let's click on follow link. Okay. Let's first look at the UI. So it's basically a simple UI. AI data analyst asks smart question about your uploaded dataset with the case. So first you need to upload here the API key, and you're uploading here your CSV file. Then you need to also asking the questions based on your CSV file. And when you click the analyze data functions, so it will analyzing here the data. Okay, this is basically our UI. It's completely built using Tailwind CSS. So now let's go on here and see how you basically implement it. So I'm just going to killing the terminal now. So first we're going to importing here Flux. So from Flux, we import here the Flux, and you also import here the random template, and we have request. And from utils, we actually importing here preprocess and shape. The function that we created here that you can see, we're just making here a file name called utils.py, where we're just going to pasting here these functions. Okay. And then we simply going to access it from here. Okay. So utils import here the people. You can also give it to here. Okay, give it here. And then after that, you're going to import here the pandas. So pandas is PD, and from Groq, we import here the Groq. Then we have created here app. So app is equal to Flux and underscore name. Then you're creating here an initial route. You can see, and method is the get method and the post methods. So it's basically having some of the variable that you can see message, the df, df to HTML, df to HTML, result HTML, and the code generator, which is completely blank. So if I go into this template, you can see this is an index.html file. So here we basically add here the CD and other Tailwind CSS. So it's just having one heading. You can see AI data analyst, and then it having one message alert. Okay, if we got any kind of errors, so it also show here the message alert on here. And after that, you're going to creating here an upload and query from. So here we uploading here and the API. So you can see method is post simple multi-part from data. You can see we also keep it here some kind of class. Simple boxes, just we using the Tailwind CSS for that. So you can see also have the upload dataset button, which is taking here name as a file, and here name is basically API key. So we basically access it, the data, access the variable from our admin file, server file, using here this name tag, or you can say keywords. Okay, it's not tag, actually keyword. And file is nothing but the file, and type is password, so that you can show the API key. So after that, what you can do, basically, we are basically actually uploading here the datasets. Okay, and we also have one div for asking the questions, and another button for submitting it out. So if the data of the preview of the HTML is coming up, so you can basically show the preview of the HTML. And after that, if the code is generated, then we're simply going to show here the generation code using our code tag, that you can see code tag. And after that, we show here our result in the form of HTML. So which one is basically coming from here, as well as we see that we're using here the Ginger template. So these are Ginger templates. Okay. So now let's go on here. So we're creating here these 6 variables: message, the df message is for the error message, the df is for data frame, and df to HTML, which one is coming from our adverb file. Here, and the preview HTML and result HTML, and also the code generator. So if the requested method is basically post, so you're getting here the file name, the query, and the Groq API by accessing here this name keyword. So you can see the name is API key, the files, and basically the questions, query. So you can see based on this name, we actually accessing here all of the data in the variable files. Okay. Now after that, what we checking here the Groq API key, that you can see basically. So we give it here, the Groq API is not provide, so please enter your Groq API key. So it will store it inside the message. You can also checking this out, but okay, not right now. We're checking it how you're testing it out. And otherwise, if the file is if otherwise find the Groq API is also provided, as well as the file is provided. So we calling here this preprocess and save functions. And if it have any errors, you also passing this error inside our the message variable that you actually created. And after that, after that, you're going to creating here this df.head to HTML, and to convert here the HTML, so that you can also preview it in our applications, because it's not an interpreter, it's nothing but an web browsers. So we give it here a class table or to w full, and if the df is not none, so we just simply going to returning here this blank. And then you have our query, that you can see prompt is equal to the same prompt, and you can see client for Groq, the code generations, everything is here. You can see everything is here. It's the same code. Otherwise, you can show that, please upload here as files. And now we need to see the more important thing. You see, this is an initial route. You can also creating here the route called the result, but you're not going to use it. So we're just going to do it in a single route. And then we're simply going to give it to here the random template. You can do it. You can give it to here a route name. And after that, you can also creating here an initial route. Okay, but this time the way I actually do it, it's essentially reloading the application in the at a time. So yeah, it's not a good practice, but for the simplicity, I do it. Okay. Okay, so here we are passing here our index.html, then our message as the messages, df.html the variable, df preview html, code generations, and the result html, and which one is directly accessed by these ones. Okay, that you can see. Okay. Now, what we can do now, we can simply go into running these applications. Okay. So let's go on here and run Python file. So after that, we simply going to uploading here the diabetes.csv. Okay, let's go on here. Now click on follow link. Now you can see if I click on choose file. Okay, not here actually. So here we go. So we can simply go into write here the questions. We can take in the question from here. I already write down some of the questions. So how many patients are older than 40? You can say that, or let's say what is the maximum BM records? Okay, we can copy this and we can paste it here. Now you're going to click hit analyze data. So you can say please fill out the field. Okay, if I give it here a wrong API key and click on analyze, maybe got error. Let's see if I go on here. So it's calling here the section. You can see error running Groq code, and you can see invalid API key. Show here, actually the message you can see on here. Okay. Now what I can do is simply going to copy here the API key, which one is maybe in over here. So we copy this out, and then you can give it here our actual API key, and then we simply going to upload here the file diabetes.csv, and then we asking here the questions. Let's asking another questions. So let's say which is the average number of pregnancy of each outcome result, or we can say that, let's say, is there any correlation between insulin level and the BMI? Let's see. So you can see also preview the first 5 group, analyze the data. Now let's see. Okay, error running Groq code insulin. Yep, what actually happening? See, if I go into this data frame, you can see I is capital in the insulins. So make sure when you're asking any questions, you should give you need to give it here your data variable name in the right way. Okay, otherwise it unable to actually accessing this clearly. So this I should be the capital. So that's why we got in this kind of error. So unfortunately the electricity is gone. So I need to continue discussion again. So what I can do, just I'm going to running here this application again. Let's say run Python file, and then I'm going to also copy here the API key. So I'm going to copy this API key, and then I'm going to go on here and click on follow links. So I can go on the full screen mode as well. Then I can pasting here my API key that I copied, and then I can also copy here the question from here. So let's say same question, let's take it out. Is there any correlations between insulin levels and the BMI? I'm just going to copy this, and after I click on here to choosing here the CSV file, and then I to pasting here the questions. So make sure that your I should be the capital. I mean, you know, to matching that with your data sets. I mean, the features name. So you can see I is capitals. So I can also removing here these labels because it don't have any labels in our data set as the name suggests. So make sure that your feature name is correct at all. Now let's click on analyze the data. So we're just calling here to the API. Now you can see here we got the results. So this is, you can see preview the first 5 row and generated Python code. It's how look like that. Okay. So you got here 0.19% correlations between the insulins and the BMI. So we can also selecting here another question from here. Let's say what is the maximum BI is recorded. So you can copy this out, and let's checking this out again. So what we need to do, we need to pasting here the question, then selecting here our the data set that you have, then you can directly pasting here our API key. So we can pasting here this API key, and then we can simply going to click here to analyze data. So you can see also it is to reload it. You can see it the thing how many maximum value is in the BMI columns. Okay, you can see 67.1. So this is how our AI data analyst application actually work. As well as if it is needed to generating here any kind of plot, it also generate it out. Okay. So that's it from our side. I hope you enjoy this full tutorial, and make sure to subscribe to channels as well as share with your friends. And thank you and bye bye.